And really looking forward to this guy. He's a Wu-Town native. He's come here to entertain us tonight. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a big Wu-Town welcome to Rich Owens. Oh yeah!
Sex and drugs and rock and roll is very good indeed.
How are we doing, you bunch of suitcases? See, it's going to catch on. It's going to catch on. We're going to make it happen. We're going to
your
make...
handkerchief, you.
It's a fair point. Hello, how are you doing? You all right? You all right? Good. My name's Rich. It's very, very nice to be here. Is what my wife told me to say to you to endear myself to the room. What can I tell you about me? I think first and foremost, I'm going to give you all a little look like behind the curtain, stand-up comedy, right? How exciting. A little look behind the curtain. I'm going to share with you some secrets about why we all do this. I mean, first of all, for charity, but more importantly, each and every single person that's performed tonight in front of you all has done it for one very, very simple reason. At the core of who we are desperate for validation. So, on that basis, if after it's all finished tonight, after it's all said and done, if any of you want to come up and chat to anybody that's performed tonight, as many of you already have, and deservedly so, if any of you want to come up to us and say, hey, I really enjoyed that. That was really, really good. You should be very proud of yourself. Happy days. Like, we appreciate it. It's really, really nice. There's no financial value to it, but it's just nice to feel good inside. If you want to take it a step further, get a bit weird with it. If you want to put your hand on my shoulder and say, hey Rich, I just want you to know that what you did tonight was special. I didn't know you had it in you, and I am deeply proud of what you've accomplished. Please do. But if you could do me an enormous personal favour and say it in my dad's voice, that would that would mean a lot to me. What else can I tell you about me of interest? They say in terms of comedy, they say write about what you know. So in theory, I should do 20 minutes worth of jokes about eating cake in bed and being depressed. But there's only so much you can get out of that. Literally, that sentence, just that. Which is good fun. I've recently found out, super exciting for me, that I'm gluten intolerant. Ooh. I know, right? Anybody else gluten intolerant in the room? You know what it's like. Because if you're anything like me, there wasn't a huge amount of joy left in your life anyway. Most of the joy left in mine came from eating toast, which, I'm now technically no longer allowed to do. I still do, because at a deeply personal level, I hate myself. But, also, I think more importantly, I'm going to continue to do it, because until somebody hands me a death certificate, a legitimate death certificate, the cause of death is Warburton Super Toasty. I'm going to crack on. It's absolutely fine. I hate myself enough to keep doing it. You've got to look on the positive side of things, though. You've got to look at the positives in these situations. So the way I see it is that I am the first member of my family to have an intolerance that isn't based around race or religion. So don't cheer them, they're bigots. They are the absolute worst. I spent a lot of years, as I think other people in this room have, in a variety of bands, doing the music. I got into that for the same reason that anybody that's gotten into music has done, is to meet attractive ladies who might want to kiss me. As it turns out, the type of music that I play, it seems to attract dudes that look exactly like me. Coming up to me at the end of gigs saying, hey man, I really, really enjoyed that chord progression. Fuck off! That's not why I just did that. You are defeating the object. Get away from me. There are no attractive women here. Shit. But, again, you've got to look on the positive side of things. Dudes that look like me are a lot easier to con into bed than attractive women. and I have received a number of really enthusiastic hand jobs and a variety of really interesting time signatures. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. It's funny because it's almost true. What else can I tell you about me that's interesting? A few years ago, I got to meet one of my genuine heroes. Right? They say never meet your heroes, and in hindsight, fair point. I got to meet, believe it or not, Louis Theroux. Is everybody in the room familiar with Louis Theroux? Right. Just in case you're not, Louis Theroux was, and still is, a documentary maker, made a lot of interesting television programmes. So for the under 30s in the room, television programmes, think of them as kind of like a long form TikTok. For the over 60s, TikTok is a mobile phone application that your grandchildren are probably really into. To try and explain it as best I can, TikTok is kind of the modern day equivalent of the BBC in the 1970s. Really, really, really popular, but chock full of undiscovered sex offenders. So many of them on there. I don't know if you're clapping my joke or sex offenders joke. It's very hard to tell.
Good risk assessment.
Isn't it? Got to be careful. I was told before I did the gig that the entire audience had been CRB checked. But yeah, I genuinely met Louis Theroux. I was on my way back from a gig in London, because I'm doing well. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was in Oxford Services, and I was getting a coffee because I was very tired, and it's dangerous to drive when you're tired. Don't fucking do it. And I'm there in Oxford Services, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm at the little table where you put the milk and the sugar in your coffee, and I became aware of a presence next to me at the table. Now, looking at me, you would rightly assume that I'm a threat. I'm a very, very dangerous man to know. Like, if you saw me in Oxford Services at 3 o'clock in the morning and didn't just run out screaming, then joke's on you, because I'll end you. But I became aware of this presence next to me, so I thought the best thing to do in these situations, diffuse the situation, show that I'm friendly, show that I'm a nice guy, somebody you would want to talk to while you're putting sugar in your coffee. So I turned around and I said, hello. And then I looked up. I realised, fuck, that's Louis Theroux off the telly. And bless him, he engaged with me. He looked back there and he said, oh, hello. If you've not seen him, he sounds just like that. I was like, right, we are off to a good start. I've engaged in conversation with somebody I respect deeply, and I should carry this on. Because if I don't, he'll just walk away, and I've wasted the opportunity. Unfortunately, I'm having these thoughts in real time in my head, so from his point of view, I'm just stood there looking at him. What do I open with? Like, what's the next part of this conversation? Like, do I say, hey, I really, really enjoy your documentaries, you know, I thought the conversations that you've had with people are brilliant. Weird Weekends, what a wonderful series of television. All of these things I could have said. What I went with was, you look just like my cousin Dave. Because he does. Bless him, he went, oh. So I said, I'm so sorry, Louis, you must get that all the time. And he kind of shook his head at me in a really disappointed way, a way that he didn't, by the way, Rolf Harris or Jimmy Savile, and went about his life, instantly forgetting that conversation, whereas I've treasured it for many years, and it's one of those things I wake up at night just regretting deeply. I do love Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux is like a really, really interesting documentary maker. I think that every positive has to have negative. Everything good has to be the bad equivalent. Which, in my opinion, when it comes to Louis Theroux, is Stacey Dooley. I hate Stacey Dooley with a passion, to the point where, she's terrible at her job, and I'd say it to her face. To the point where I have watched some of her documentaries and I always find myself siding with the things she's investigating. Half an hour in, I'm like, hey, Stacey, maybe these Gambian sex traffickers are getting a bad rap and you're not helping. Maybe they make a very valid point. They don't. It's just because Dooley's involved and I don't like her.
Better than that Mitchell bloke.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, if they fought, the real winner is me. As well as enjoying Louis Theroux, part of the reason that a lot of us do is we've talked about validation, and with validation comes success, and with success comes, the ultimate, the pinnacle of success, in my opinion. A lot of people will think it's, awards like an Oscar or a BAFTA. Some people might say, the pinnacle of success and recognition for talent is like a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That sounds really interesting. For me, the pinnacle of success would be cementing my place in my close personal friend Peter's big celebrity book of the dead. Which at face value sounds super fucking weird, doesn't it? So I'll give context. I've got a friend called Peter. He's a real human being, and one of Peter's many weird hobbies is that he keeps what he refers to as Peter's big celebrity book of the dead. So every time a celebrity that's had some kind of positive impact on Peter's life dies, cuts out a little picture of him, sticks him in his book, writes a little eulogy underneath. And it's super interesting because it's, it's kind of like a window into the mind of a maniac. And I used to really, really enjoy reading it. I used to enjoy having a little thumb through, just to get a good feel for who Peter was as a person, degenerate, and just get to understand it a little bit more. Now, quite near the beginning of his book, because Peter enjoys his music, as many of us do. Quite near the beginning of his book was a photo of the famous soul singer, the Walrus of Love, Barry White. Big Barry White fan. Who doesn't like a bit of Barry? Sexy music from a sexy, sexy man. Now, it's cut out a photo of Barry White, the Walrus of Love, one of the greatest soul singers of all time. Underneath Barry White, to eulogise him, he's written, Barry White, actually black. But what Peter has done is he's left the next page blank. I was like, Peter, why have you left the next page blank? And he explained it to me. And from that moment onwards, for about the next 10 to, I think it took about 15 years from him explaining to me to this kind of coming good, I was obsessed, utterly obsessed with the death of Cilla Black. Like, I couldn't wait for Cilla Black to die. That was me. Every time the news came on, I was like, come on, today's going to be the day. And then finally that day came. We got news that Cilla Black had passed away. I was so excited. Best day of my life. I phoned Pete straight away and I told him, and he was like, finally we can put this to bed. So now, if you go to Pete's house, which you're probably more than welcome to do, he's a very lonely man, but if you go to Pete's house and you ask to read Peter's big celebrity book of the dead, you'll find quite near the beginning there's a photo of Barry White, the Walrus of Love, one of the greatest soul singers of our generation. Underneath he's written, Barry White, actually black. On the page opposite there is a much newer photo of Cilla Black. Underneath he's written, Cilla Black hosted blind date. 15 years. Okay, that means a lot to me. I want in on that book. I'm miles away from it. I'm a very, very long way away from getting in there, as you can tell. But, I like to think that I'm getting there slowly but surely. There are people who, in a roundabout way, kind of look up to me. And they're my children. I have two of them, who I love, in a way. My son, I am my son's hero. Bless him, he says loads of nice things to me all the time. Like, you're really funny. I really like you. When am I going to meet my real dad? Just, standard kid stuff. Standard kid things, He's a funny boy. He's a funny boy. I also have a daughter, worth pointing out. I have a daughter as well, but she's never said or done anything funny, so she won't feature in the rest of the set. She can If you came around my house, you'd just to pause the comedy for a second, I've just said if you come around my house, I want you to know that that's the setup for a joke. It's not a genuine invitation. None of you are welcome in my home. But if you come around my house, you would see it firsthand. My son does a lot of hilarious things. His favourite new thing to do is a game he's invented recently called Willy Hands. He just puts his hand in his pants and then tries to shake yours. No, you dirty little deviant. They're at that weird age. Where everything is fun and enjoyable. I don't like it. I'm looking forward to kind of the teenage phase where they just want to stay in their room crying and wanking all day, because at least at that point we'll have something in common. So, there's that. But the way I look at it, I've got 2 kids and I'm happy with my lot. So what I've done, because I don't want it to happen again, is I've taken extreme steps. Gentlemen, I'm going to address you. Hey, the ladies as well, because 2022, equal opportunities. Has anybody else in here, aside from me, had a vasectomy?
Yes!
This guy,
Yeah.
this fucking guy, he knows.
Are you sure?
He knows.
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah, I was going
You
to say.
think you have?
You're a bit uncertain.
Give me something down now.
Talk me through that you think you have. Was it a legitimate doctor? Did it just happen by accident? Right, okay, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to explain my experience with this, and if this sounds familiar to you, nod along. If this sounds nothing like what's happened, you've just been assaulted. It's one of the two. So,
I think he read a card that said, "Have sex with me."
I don't want to know who sent it, it's terrifying. Bought it from Hallmark though, it's super weird. So, my experience with a vasectomy was as follows, As I say, I've got 2 children, and I don't want any more. That was my first of my 3 kind of essential criteria for deciding that I wanted to have a vasectomy. Got 2 kids, don't want any more, absolutely no interest in it. Criteria number 2, I am now 37 years old, which means that my pull-out game is super weak. And thirdly, and I think most importantly, I just really enjoy unprotected sex with my wife. So, for me, that was the key. Those are the main 3 things. I was all right, I'm ticking all these boxes, I was probably going to talk to somebody about this. So I went to go and see my GP. First thing you do, go see your GP. Now, my experience with my GP was super weird, as it turns out very, very different to a friend of mine. I've got a friend called Steve. I know, 2 friends. Look at me go, thriving. Steve is in a very, very similar domestic situation to myself, in as much as he is married with 2 children and does not want any more. Same age as me, super weak pull-out game. And thirdly, he also really, really enjoys unprotected sex with my wife. So he's a good kind of 6 months to a year behind me in the process. I'm there, I'm helping him, guiding him through and in. And from the collar. So he phones me. He's like, right, I want to see my GP. That was really weird, wasn't it? Seeing the GP is a really weird experience. And I was like, what do you mean weird? And he talked me through what happened when he saw his GP. And then we compared it to what happened when I saw mine. Now, he goes to see his GP. He says, I'd like to discuss having a vasectomy with you. And his GP's like, mate, are you sure though? Are you absolutely sure? Because you really need to think about it. You'll see on television people will make jokes, it's reversible. Now, once it's done, mate, once it's done, you're done. And if that happens, you've got to think about your long-term future. What if you and your wife eventually change your minds and decided you want to try for a 3rd child? You can't. What happens if you and your wife separated and you met a new partner and they wanted children? You can't. Heaven forbid, if you lost one of your children and wanted to try again for another, you wouldn't be able to do it. Steve's like, shit, man, that's pretty deep. Rich, you have serious mental health problems. How did you handle that conversation? My experience was very, very different. I went into my GP's office. They were sat down at their desk, didn't even turn around to look at me when I came in. And they said, Mr. Owens, how can I help? And I said, I would like to have a conversation with you about having a vasectomy. My GP did this. Yeah, go on then. They took one look at me and thought, this man's procreated already, we cannot allow him to do it again. And he made a very, very valid point. He signed off, happy days, off I go to Redditch Hospital to meet my consultant. Seems backwards going to Redditch for medical attention. Yes. Fuck it, stick a leech on it, just see what happens. No, I had to go there. Met my consultant. Then there'd be 2. Met my consultant. My consultant was my favourite person throughout the entire procedure because he was so aggressively Eastern European. And yeah, we chatted, and they ask you the same questions every single time, just to make sure you're sure. And then he said the best thing anybody said to me throughout, I'm going to do an impression because, you've had one, the rest of you have no idea just how good this impression is. Very much like my Theroux. Mr. Owens, when we do procedure, would you like to have local or general anaesthetic? So when you had yours, what did they do? Sleepy time or just num num num?
Oh, just num.
You idiot! Why? Were you given the option?
I had to lay a carpet the next day, so...
It doesn't say none forever. If it has, consult your local GP. Something's wrong. Hello? No. They...
I wanted to check it still worked afterwards.
Does it?
It's got a point. It just got a point.
Lucky. Can't have it all, can we? Now, I had no carpet to lay the next day, so I was like, knock me the fuck out, my friend. At which point, he said to me, the best thing, and this is directed at you should know this. He said, men who have this procedure under local anesthetic, who are they trying to impress? Me? I am not impressed. I love you so much. Love you. The bear had broken in through the window and just put in a fucking headlock, and I drank some homebrew from under his desk. I think I just kissed him. If it said get on bed, I do it now with teeth. Okay, let's make that happen. The other thing I liked about him is that he was the only person throughout the entirety that used accurate medical terminology when describing everything. Because they talk to you. It's kind of like farm to table. They talk to you from the very beginning to the very, very end. And what they tell you is, and again, to quote my wonderful consultant, Mr. Owens, after procedure, it is very, very important that you masturbate to point of completion at least 24 times. What, in a day? Those are rookie numbers. Pump those numbers up, son. Everybody else tiptoed around it. I'm here to have an operation on my genitals. It's okay for you to use the right words. My GP was like, so after you've had the procedure, you will have to clean the pipes. Don't like that. I used to work at a bar. I know what cleaning the pipes involves. If you've never done it, it involves, putting a lot of chemicals in your system, then trying to flush them out with water and hoping for the best. And those days are behind me. I have 2 children. I'm in bed by 10 every night. So I liked him a lot. He was my favourite person. They send you off. Then I went off to hospital, and I had a procedure. There's nothing funny about it. They operated on my genitals. The only thing I remember of the day, because I was a little bit nervous, because I was having the sleepy nighttime procedure. They put the thing in your hand. I've since learned it's called a cannula, not a catheter. 2 very, very different things. 2 very, very different things. They put the cannula in your hand, and then they put the happy sleepy time juice in, and they go, right, Mr. Owens, just count backwards from 10. I'm like, do I look like fucking Carol Vorderman? Jesus Christ. Can't do it forwards. But I tried really hard, and I was like, right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 2, 1. Oh, this is still happening. And the last thing I heard anybody say before they operated on my genitals was like, oh, they're normally asleep by now. No, not for me. Filled me with dread. Woke up, everything was fine, happy days. Didn't even have to lay carpet the next day. What a champion. But I'm sure you did a wonderful job, and I'm sure your dick really fucking hurt. Because the next day, let me tell you, it really does. Especially when you get home and one of your toddlers runs at you head crotch height. Daddy! No! Oh, get away from me, you horrible little bastards. So, that all happened, everything was fine. I did the pipe cleaning because I'm a consummate professional. Now, this is what they don't tell you, because at the end of all of this, you have to go and you have to give a sample, because they have to check to make sure it's worked. Now, they made me go, which in hindsight, I'm not sure if I'd take personally, but they sent me to Birmingham Women's Hospital. Where, when you get to the front desk and you say, hello, I'm here to masturbate, when they say, have you made an appointment? Always say, do you not do walk-ins? Because very, very similar to going out to eat during lockdown. It's like, hello, I'm here to masturbate. Fine, you can, but you have to sit down, you have to order food. No more than 6 of you. So got there, and my wife, bless her, my lovely wife, she came. Her? Oh no, sorry. She came with me
Okay.
to the appointment. Only I came, as is tradition in our marriage. She came with me, and she said, I don't want to come into the room with you when you're doing the thing, because it's just a bit weird if I do. And I was like, yeah, I'll give you that. That's a bit weird. So they lead you off, they take you into the room, they give you a little cup to do your doings into, and then suddenly you're alone in a very, very sterile looking room with a very sticky looking sofa and the most depressing thing I've ever seen in my life on a table in front of you. Now, is there anybody in this room who has a job that they don't like? It's okay, we're among friends. Look at that hand going straight out now. What's your name, man? What do you do that you hate?
Chefing.
You're a chef?
Yeah.
In this economy, you must be some, like, why don't you like chefing?
It's shit.
Yeah, but like, there's a massive, you can charge, like, you can mad squill a chef at the moment, because there's none of them. It's because of your attitude, there's none, how dare you. But, alright, okay, so let's see, what's your name, sorry, man? Ollie, let's use you as the benchmark, Ollie. Right, let's use you as the benchmark, because I'm going to describe somebody's job now, and at the end of it, I want you to honestly tell me if you think that chefing is worse than this.
Go for it.
Because on the table in this horrible, horrible room in Birmingham's Women's Hospital is a folder. Inside the folder are some very, very clearly laminated pages. Which means, ladies and gentlemen, when you really stop and think about it, when we were on our doorsteps clapping for the NHS last year, you were clapping for a very small percentage of people who work in hospitals who at some point during their day were given 20 quid out of petty cash by their supervisor, told to go to the nearest newsagents, purchase some top shelf magazines, bring them back to the hospital, a place of healing, go through them, choose their favourite images, cut them out, laminate them, and then stick them in a folder for people like me who have just had medical procedures to relieve themselves to. Worse than chefing?
Yeah.
There you go. See?
My mate went for one of those and it was horse and hounds, so...
And I finished far too quickly. I like to think that deep down there is a very, very small percentage of NHS workers who are secretly super into that, like they got into the gig because that's what they wanted to do. They come from a very, very, very long line of like NHS pornography laminators. I like to think that there's a guy, his name's like Steve, and Steve is just like super fucking into it because Steve's dad before him was an NHS porn laminator. Steve's granddad before him was an NHS porn laminator. Steve's granddad's dad before him, well, there was no laminating, but you know, he'd draw you a very, very accurate photo of a lady's tuppence and just hold it up to the window for you to do whatever you needed to do. But now those things are starting to die out. And do you know why they're dying out? Because of the internet. Because of your tubes and your hubs and your ex-hamsters and other assorted websites which are available.
There's always horse and hounds.
There's always Horse and Hounds, which is available digitally, which I'm a big fan of. You know, like it's people like you and your Horse and Hounds and your digital pornography that are keeping food off Steve's table. How do you sleep at night? How dare you? How dare you? Now, I will say this. There is no amount of money in the world you could have paid me to touch that folder. But I will guarantee you something, because I've actually spoken to somebody who now works in that hospital, and they've confirmed this for me. I'll guarantee you, if you look inside that folder, there won't be any sexy nurse pornography. There'll be none. Because, you know, it's not fair. Because there are nurses that work in that hospital, real ones, real nurses. So there'll be no sexy nurse pornography in that folder, which to me wouldn't have actually been much of an issue. Mainly because my mom was a nurse. And because of that, it eliminated any kind of eroticism that you may think you may find around nurses. Oh, sexy nurses. No, manically depressed, miserable, hard drinking nurses. That's my experience. So the whole sexy nurse thing for me is off the table. Doubly frustrating for me. My dad was a slutty Catholic schoolgirl. So again, that's just that ruined as well. So sad times for all involved. Ollie, do you want to get a job in the NHS, or are you happy cooking?
Fuck that.
Yeah, there you
No,
go.
you can't.
Good.
That's the point.
Ollie can't. He's not allowed. Not allowed near hospitals. So, there's that side of things to take into consideration. Now, obviously, the big question on everybody's minds in this room at the moment, the big question on everybody's minds is, Rich, you've talked a lot about your genitals for the last 10 minutes or so. What we want to know is, was the procedure a success? So I'll leave you with this. Yes, it was. Clap for my testicles, please. So, 4, not on. So on that basis, hello. On that basis, I'll just leave you knowing this, ladies, gentlemen, anybody who's here. Now knowing that I am firing blanks and incapable of impregnating anybody, if there's anybody in the room who's looking at me thinking, you know what, I would be well up for an affair with that very, very tired, depressed looking man. The only thing that's holding us back at this point is your discretion. Thank you very much, everybody. My name's Rich Owens, and you've all been really, really lovely. Thank you very much. Give yourselves a round of applause. You're very good.